Hey guys, coming up for the season finale of Vinyl, Season 1, Episode 10, Alibi. And I was really looking forward to this finale. I think lately the series has been really good. I think they're starting to understand more of what made it really good. And especially knowing that Terrence Winter stepped down as writer after this episode, I really didn't know where we were headed, if maybe there was going to be a new direction or what was going to happen. Because obviously the show didn't get renewed for Season 2, but since Terrence Winter, stopped working on the show, I didn't really know what was going to happen. But overall, I will say, with this finale, I didn't really know what I was going to get into, but I will say that I really did enjoy this finale overall. This is in no way the best episode of the season. I do think this was way too neat of a finale, but I do get why they had to do things the way they did. They did this because a lot of people complained about this season. A lot of people felt very underwhelmed by this season. And I know they constructed this a while ago, but I think their thinking is that they got rid of some of the things that just weren't working, and now they're going to focus on other things, which let's just get into it because there is a lot to talk about. Not as much as I expected. First of all, one of my things about this episode, where the hell was Devon? Devon was nowhere to be found in this episode, and that really disappointed me. Devon has been as much a part of the show as Richie. I mean, that's one of the biggest parts of Richie's life is Devon, and the fact that Devon was nowhere to be found, I thought was just dumb. I don't know if they completely forgot or if that was just an idea, but I don't know why Devon wasn't here. It made absolutely no sense to me, and I just wasn't a fan of it. So we see Richie, as we know, he decided to take the deal and basically spy on, and basically, be the, be the rat for Golasso. Well, not be the rat for Golasso, he's gonna get information on Golasso. He's sitting in a bar drinking while the song plays and meets up with Drucker, who introduced him to Matt Seeley, who is the agent assigned to his case, and Drucker asks how he's holding up. Richie says it's pretty surreal, if you get to be honest, and Drucker says they need to know that he's committed, and tells Richie that Golasso has killed people for a lot less than what he's about to do, and Richie asks if they're going to be looking out for him, and Seeley says that he's his liaison, not his bodyguard. Drucker says that they can't guarantee him safety, and Richie asks how long it's going to go on. Seeley says the better the info, the sooner they can put Golasso in jail, and Drucker says his role as an informant is to do just that, inform them, which basically, that's what he needs to do, not get involved, to entrap, or play Columbo. He hears something, he tells them, and that's just how it's going to be. So we kind of get the same dialogue that we got last week, but we see more that Richie is willing to do this, you can definitely tell. So Seeley says not to pry and let it come up naturally. Richie asks where the meetings are supposed to happen, and Drucker says wherever, and Richie asks about the bug, and Drucker assures him that the federal government have no interest in hearing about which rock star is a clap, so the bugs run on batteries and they'll be dead soon anyway. So Richie asks what happens now, and I like that Drucker tells him, go live your life, and if, he needs them to reach out through his lawyer, and don't do anything stupid. So basically, he's got to play this very in a sly way, which we know Richie doesn't really know how to do. Richie's not very quiet about things. But this is something that Richie's never had to do before. He needs to be very quiet. He needs to be very, not very public about it. He basically just needs to say, oh, I heard this very shady conversation. I picked up on the bug, and luckily, since there's a bug in his room, it picks up everything that Colosso's saying, and that's a big part of this. So Richie says it's a little late for that, and they leave, and because obviously, the whole thing with Buck Rogers. So we see Clark and Jorge are at the fun club jamming out, thinking about the possibilities of where it could go, because as we know, Clark absolutely loves this music. He's now been exposed to this funk music. He doesn't know where it's come from, but it is a really great song. Kill the Lights, I definitely really did love that song. I think it very well represented music of that kind of genre of the time period, and you can just tell that he's loving this music and he really wants, American Century to produce it. So Nasty Bits practice for their upcoming concert, and without a doubt, this was the most we've seen of the Nasty Bits all season. In fact, I heard someone say that if you were to come into this episode, you not watch any of the episodes, you would think that the Nasty Bits were the main focus of this season, which in many ways, I feel like that was the idea. The Nasty Bits were meant to be the main focus here, and I feel like this episode definitely shows that. A lot of this episode, to me, felt like what the show should have been, and definitely it's something I really liked. But the thing is, this isn't a mini-series. This has a second season, so I don't need to worry about, that it's never what it could be. I do think that season 2 can live up to the potential because of this episode. So Alex tells Kip to stop. They clash over how long to play the chord, and you can tell that things are just not good here. Nolan tells him to break it up. Jamie says to take 5, and Kip asks if she's leading the band. They go to take a break, upset and annoyed, and Jamie obviously wants to confront Kip because she knows that he's just not acting right, and Kip says that Alex thinks he's prima donna. Jamie says he's been acting like a bitch for days with his passive-aggressive bullshit, and Kip says her and Alex should get together and figure out a solution for his behavior, and Jamie accuses him of being being jealous, and we knew this was going to be a problem ever since the whole situation with Kip and with Alex and Jamie from last week when they had the threesome. We knew this was going to be a problem, and basically Kip says they open them for the adults in 24 hours, and he doesn't give a shit about which bandmates, who she hooks up with and things like that. And you can tell that he does care, even though he's not admitting the problem. He does in fact care, and he's just not admitting it at this point. He's trying to keep his cool, but you can tell it's really upsetting him. So Zak meets with Galasso, thanks him, and Galasso says he'll always make time for a friend. And this is probably the worst mistake that Zak could have done. I mean, why would Galasso care? That was my thinking. Why would Galasso care? Obviously, Zak doesn't really know what he's doing because he doesn't know about the gangs and things as well as Richie. But why would you go to Galasso? I just don't understand why you would go to a mob boss of all people and talk to them about this. But we know ever since the whole thing with Zak and Richie last week, we knew that Zak was definitely going to do something about Richie. He just doesn't trust Richie anymore. Zak meets with Galasso and thanks him, and Galasso says that he'll always make time for a friend. Zak says the reason he's there is because of Richie and their difficulties. He admits that this is hard. Galasso says to relax. Zak tells him that Richie's a drug addict and a compulsive liar, and Galasso says it's the hand in gloves and says the creeps out there will sell their own mothers for a shot of junk. And Zak talks about how Richie has a family and is estranged from his kids, and then quotes The Godfather. And I love this scene. Probably one of the funniest scenes of this entire season is Zak casually brings up a quote from The Godfather, and Galasso's like, oh, I hated The Godfather, and Zak's like, oh, I thought it was okay. I thought that was kind of funny because it does show that when The Godfather first came out, people actually didn't love it, if you guys didn't know. People didn't love The Godfather when it first came out, and it kind of just developed more of a following over the years and became, an amazing movie that it is today, which, Godfather is amazing, but back then they didn't see it as, that way. A lot of people just saw it as, awards movie, and that's really it, which I thought was interesting. So Zak says the reason they came for the loan in the first place was because Richie lost the $90K in the hotel in Vegas, which he tried to blame on him, and obviously, this really upsetted him. Galasso says he's sorry to hear all this, and Zak says it's not easy for him to say, and says their corporate bylaws have a moral clause that call for the removal of any officer engaged in any immoral or unethical behavior, and he get rid of Richie, and all it takes is a vote by the other partners. And Galasso asks what he can do to help, and Zak says that he came for support and to keep him apprised of what's going on, and he wanted him here for him. Now, what I saw that as is Zak didn't know who to go to, so he just went to Galasso because he knew Galasso was allied with Richie. He knew the whole thing going on there, and he felt that Galasso would be a good person to talk to. So Galasso says he hears him loud and clear, thanks him for stopping by, and you can just tell that Galasso is going to do some of this. This is not a good idea that Zak did this. I don't know why he thought of doing this. I mean, he probably was just thinking, again, like I said, I think he just needs someone to talk to, but this was not really a smart thing to do, definitely. Really not. He really should have thought this through more, definitely. So Skip tells Richie that Zak is okay to full-time reps, though they all have to discuss it, and Skip tells Julie, Maury, and Casper that he has heard from an outside source that Indigo's album has all of a sudden been selling, and Richie asks where they're with the Nasty Bits final mix, and Julie says 9 songs on the A-side, leading with A Woman Like You, and back to the whole Indigo thing, obviously they're all freaking out because they were going to cut them, and they can't believe that they're charting, but Maury then tells Richie basically all about the problem with A Woman Like You, that it's Lester's song, and that he needs to contact Lester while he was still under contract with him, and they just changed a couple words, and Richie doesn't see a problem with it and says he'll just have Scott adjust the paperwork, and Maury says they need to get Lester's permission, which Richie says they don't need because it's a compulsory license, but Maury does, talk about how he never actually let Lester record it, so it is still under Lester's license, and basically he says he should agree to it because he's their manager. Maury says to send a few Galosso's boys, and they should soften up a little, and again, Maury's always going to be harping on this whole gangster situation. That really is the problem with Maury. I mean, we remember how terrified, Lester really is of Maury and Galasso. And, if you hear his name, Claro Galasso, he's freaking out. Obviously, it brings him, really shapes him up a little bit. But obviously, Galasso's really the reason why he can't sing anymore. Because obviously, they beat his throat and things like that. And that's something that he'll always remember. So he'll always have beef with them, you can tell. So Zak is getting ready to do Xavier's recording session, and him and Scott go back and forth until Scott realizes that he can't hear Zak while he's in the recording room. A really funny scene, but you guys know I haven't loved Scott, but I did think this was a funny scene. I mean, Scott's kind of an idiot at points, and Zak talks to him about ousting Richie, and he wants him to draw up the letter, and Scott says that he will write it, but he's not handing it to him, and Zak says he'll give it to him, and Scott asks how this is going to work, and who will run A&R next, because they these are the questions that we want to know. I mean, if Zak really plans on getting rid of Richie, who's going to do all this stuff? And Zak says that he's going to take over. Julie will report to him, or he can go too. And Scott asks about promotions, and Zak says he can handle both departments, as he's not on drugs, like formulate a business plan that generates actual revenue, and basically do everything that Richie couldn't, because he just feels he can do all these things. And Scott asks if he ran it by Maury, and Zak says none of his business, and he answers to Galasso anyway, who he happens to be very close with, and says that those who say don't know, and those who know don't say, which is very interesting. So Gary shows up, and Zak says he was worried about him, and Gary says this is untenable, coming all the way in from the Massapequa, the Long Island Railroad is stifling all these drones scurrying to work, and Zak says he should write a song about it like the Monkees did with Pleasant Valley Sunday, and Gary says he's not Davy Jones. He says he needs an apartment in the Village, maybe near other artists or up by Central Park so he can walk, and Zak says big changes are coming in a couple of weeks. They're going to give him whatever he wants. Zak gives him some ideas for a stage show, and basically we see Gary has some ideas for a stage show, which he kind of wants to be like a spaceship, like The Day the Earth Stood Still, which I thought was very interesting, which also connects to his whole David Bowie parallel, because of course you guys know the song Space Oddity. That's David Bowie's most famous song. I just thought that was kind of cool. Remember, we were introduced through Gary singing Life on Mars. Zak, heard him singing Life on Mars and just fell in love with it. Very much connected to what Bowie did for Space Oddity is what Gary wants to do for his music, which I think is interesting. So Zak tells him to get started. They can talk all about the sketches after the break, and Gary says he's going to need a minute to warm up, and Zak then asks Scott if he's going to hang out for a while. Scott says he's going to go get to work on the letter, and Richie and Andy are then going over gigs for artists to play out, and Corzo just casually comes in and doesn't want to leave at all. Like, he literally just comes in for no reason, even though he doesn't really need to be there, and it just shows how rude Corzo is. I mean, we've always known that Corzo's kind of rude, but this shows that more than anything. Basically, Corzo says that he wants 10 tickets, which I love the part where Corzo's talking about how Jerry Greenberg is trying to push Hall & Oates because he doesn't really think it's going to be a thing right now because Hall & Oates wasn't relevant yet, but Richie says he's kind of busy right now, and he sits down, and Richie continues what he's doing. Corzo says he wants 10 tickets for the show, and Andy says they can't because they're promoting the Nasty Bits, and she tells Richie Scott Mooney is interested and wants 7 tickets, and Corzo said there's no radio station that's going to play the Nasty Bits simply because of how vulgar they are, and yeah, the Nasty Bits, they have some really, a lot of profanity in there, and that's something that back then you could never play on the radio, and still today, I mean, obviously there are restrictions, but you can play explicit music. Back then, though, that was kind of known as just the devil's music, and Richie says it's not about airplay. They get the DJs talking, the kids will find the record, and Corzo says they have to hear it first. Richie says that they'll hear about it from the DJs who, after they tell them about it from the Dolls concert, and Corzo says that with those lyrics they'll be arrested, and Richie says they're cool over that, they're cool with that, and no one will call the cops. And Andy says that they actually would do better with the publicity, and I like that they kind of thought of it in this very cynical way, where they don't really care if the cops are called, because it'll do them better, actually. They'll be more popular, they'll get more talked about, and they'll just become more famous over it. I mean, you guys know the most famous concert stories from, like, the 1970s. There are some crazy stories out there. I mean, look up like, Jimi Hendrix concerts, look up Woodstock, all those crazy things. There were tons of concerts where FBI's just raided the place because of what was going on, but they didn't really do anything about it because the crowd was loving it. So CC tells them Galasso is there, and he tells Andy to give them minutes, and Corzo asks if he should leave. Galasso says he should hear them too, and tells Richie about what Zak wants to do, and obviously this is not going to end well. Just the way this was done, it's not going to end well. Heather then tells Zak that Richie wants to see him. He's with Galasso, which Zak knows is bad news, and Zak goes to see Richie. Now, he's thinking Galasso is going to be on his side. He's going to think this is going to be okay, that there's nothing bad's going to happen here. Galasso does the exact opposite. Galasso tells Zak he told Richie what they talked about, and Richie tells him to sit down. Zak says he left him no choice, and Galasso said to shut up, he's trying to sell out his partner, and then he comes to him and he says he thought that they were supposed to be smart, asks him in what universe he gives a shit about who runs the fucking company. He says he got a chop shop by Yankee Stadium, he uses it to crush stolen cars, and he's lucky he's not in the trunk of one of them, and says if Richie dies, he owes him 100 grand plus the vig, and if he dies, Richie owes him, and if they both die, his daughter's will owe him, if it means he got to put him on the street to collect it, and he asks if he understands him and tells him he doesn't give a fuck what his problems are and leaves. Richie asks him what the fuck is wrong with him. He should know how this shit works and says he can't borrow money from someone like that, and then shakes confidence about getting paid back. He can't do that, and Basically, he says he has to know how to play this, and Zak says he's an expert on manipulating and lets him learn from him. And obviously, things are very tense between these two. I thought this was a genuinely good fight here. Richie says that they're this close to righting the ship, and Zak says he knows, except he's the one who steered into an iceberg, and Richie says it's a drone and he's an asshole. Zak says he's right, and Richie says that he lost some money and hurt his feelings. He didn't serve him up to get killed, and I did like that Richie said, look, I understand I did wrong. Can we move past this? And the detectives then basically... So, obviously, things are not good between Richie and Zak right now, and I don't think they're going to be for a while. I mean, it does not seem like they necessarily solve things this episode. I think Richie wants to move past this, but there's just a lot that Richie's put Zak through. I mean, he's put his family through hell. We know that Zak lost a lot of money. We know that Zak thought that he lost some money, and now knowing that Richie did, I mean, it really has put a damper on their friendship, and I don't know if they're going to get it back for a while. I think it definitely is going to be something that they don't really get back till next season. We'll have to see, though. So the detectives then hear, this is very interesting, the detectives hear what Golasso said on the bug about the stolen cars. They go to Golasso's stolen car shop, and Volhill finds tons of information about Golasso. We're talking like fake license plates, fake like IDs, things like that. All this stuff that Golasso has, and this definitely is going to play in the next season. I do think a lot of next season is going to be Richie still going to be an informant. He's still going to talk about Golasso, and basically that's gonna, he's gonna tell him Golasso, and definitely I think that's gonna be a big part next season. So Kip comes home to Jamie, who asks where he was, says she's sorry, made a huge mistake, and they all did, and she says to stop pretending this isn't something that they did together, and to start saying how he feels, and he asks how she feels, and she says she cares about him, and she cares about Alex. There's an attraction or something, and Kip just freaks out. He starts throwing things at her, says he quits, and tells her to pick up her shit and get out and don't ever come back, and he never wants to see her again, and you can tell that he really is broken by this news. He really doesn't know how to react to it. So Skip then tells Julie and Scott that Indigo are charging 72 with a bullet, and Scott asks how this is possible, and Scott says that they dropped them, and he sent her to their manager. Julie asks why he do that, and he says it's because of what Richie told him to do. But then Clark enters, throws an unopened stamped letter at their feet, and that's when he reveals that he's been working with Jorge all along, and everything that's and everything that they've been doing. The fact that there's this song "Kill the Lights" that he wants to do. And I like that Clark finally spoke his mind, because like I said, Clark has been a very outspoken employee. A lot of people haven't taken him seriously, and finally Clark has said, look, I like this, I like him, I think we should sign him, and he would be very good for us. And yeah, in many ways he would be. I mean, they need to create a certain variety, and I do think that Jorge would be good for the label, definitely. So I definitely like seeing that. Richie then goes to confront Lester about using a woman like you, and Lester could not be more of a dick about it. I mean, yes, Lester has a lot of beef with Richie, but Lester really was a dick about this. He asked for $20K and to throw in a couple more bands from the manager, which I don't think is necessarily too much to ask. I do think that makes sense, and Richie says that they can do better things together than they can separately, and I was really wondering if Richie was going to say, hey, why don't we collab together, but Lester definitely is not interested. At this point, he wants to work on his own. He's not interested, especially with Maury there. He has no interest, so basically he says that he will cash the check, and he does agree he does basically give him the song rights. So while walking down the street, Zak steps in a pile of animal feces. Suddenly a car pulls up, and Zak is forced inside. The car drives off, leaving one of Zak's shoes in the street. Now, what's going on here, we don't know. So Richie exits the elevator in the ACR offices. Jamie tells him that she can't find Kip. Cece receives a call from Zak and hands Richie the phone. Seconds later, he runs out of the office. I mean, he's got tons of problems going on. Kip's not there, Zak's gone, and Richie arrives at the garage or warehouse to find several men sitting in a circle, Golasso, Zak, and Corzo. And several of Golasso's henchmen are standing nearby. Golasso informs Richie of the cop shop raid and feels that someone in the room is a snitch. And obviously, Richie at this point is freaking out because he knows that he's the snitch. He knows the one that did this, and again, Corzo opens his mouth at the wrong time. He says straight out to Golasso that Richie killed Buck and Rogers, and Golasso interrupts, stressing he doesn't want to hear anymore. Silently motions one of his henchmen, who calmly walks over to Corzo, removes the gun from his jacket, and just kills Corzo right then and there. Golasso pretty much thinks that Corzo's the one that's been basically, ratting on him, and that he's the one responsible for all this. So basically, they're good. Richie might not have to do this anymore because he thinks that Corzo really was the one doing this. And Richie yells, reaches Zak, freak out, and grabs one another. Golasso warns Zak that this is what happens when people talk too much, and that was crazy scene, just the way that Golasso did this, it really to show how powerful he is. So Zak and Richie exit quickly, and the line that Richie says here, where he says, we're never going to talk about this again, let's never speak about this again, that really seems like this storyline never worked, and now they're going to move past it, and I'm happy about it, because as much as I did enjoy the murder case, I will admit, this was not the show for it. I mean, this is not Boardwalk Empire, this is Vinyl, a show about music. It's not really a gangster show, and I get that they tried to do that, and I get that Terrence Winter wanted to do sort of like another gangster show because of Boardwalk Empire. This is just not the show to do that with. I mean, there's so much more you can explore with Vinyl. I really think that part of the show was holding them back, so I'm glad they did get away from that. I don't know if Golasso is done completely. I think we will see him again, but I think he's not going to be as major as he was this season. I do think we're going to focus more on the music next season, which I'm happy about. So basically after this, it all focuses on the nasty bits. We see Showtime nears, no one can locate Kip. Lester and Jamie go to his apartment. He doesn't answer. They burst in and find Kip on the floor in his underwear, unconscious, a syringe lying nearby. Lester and Jamie move him to the bathtub and fill it with water. Zach returns to ACR offices. Scott, Julie, and Gary are listening to early music by Freddie Mercury, awestruck by his vocals. And Gary sees Zach and immediately continues his rant about getting an apartment. Zach responds abrasively, leaving Gary stunned, and basically, Scott covers him, offers to let him stay at his apartment temporarily. Obviously, he's very stressed out right now, so he's basically just going to take out his anger on anyone. Zach then takes some pills with a swig of vodka, remembers he's only wearing one shoe. He removes a pair of golf shoes from a desk drawer, and I don't know if this is going to say that Zach's going to have more problems next season, but I do kind of think that's going to happen. Basically, a short time later, Richie then arrives at Kip's apartment in a panic. Kip is alert, vomiting in a bucket. The rest of the band looks on in disgust. Richie tells Jamie to tie Kip's arm. Richie fills a syringe with cocaine, injects it into Kip's arm, and seconds later, Kip jumps up disoriented. It really seems like one of those crazy stories you've heard about rock concerts before. Just the way this was done, it really did feel that way. Kip and Alex and finally have it out over the threesome situation, and once Richie realizes what's going on between the three of them, he fires Jamie right on the spot, and she's devastated, but she knew this kind of thing was going to happen. I mean, Andy warned her that this is what the thing that happens, and obviously he's really upset. He basically knows that Jamie did this, and in the hallway, Jamie's in tears, pleads with Richie not to fire her, and I like what Richie said. You know, he wasn't a complete dick about this. He does admit to her that he said what he needed to say to get the band on track. He assures her she still has a job, but she can no longer work with the nasty bits, and this is something I like. I know a lot of people were worried that Jamie was just going to sleep around and be with the nasty bits all this time, but no, she can't work with them, and I do think it gets Jamie closer to what she wants. You know, the nasty bits are too good for Jamie. I mean, she's too good for the nasty bits. She needs more of a position. She needs to be an A&R. I know that's what she wants, and I feel like it's going to get her closer to that. You know, by her not working with the nasty bits, I feel like it gets her closer to what she wants, and it really puts Jamie in a new hopeful direction that I'm very happy to see. So Richie then leaves to make a phone call, and we don't know who he necessarily calls, but then we see probably the best scene in this episode. I love this scene. I thought this was a very realistic scene. I love the way this was done. We see everything's on the line for American Century and Alibi Records. That is their new name, Alibi Records. That's been their subtitle. That's been their, their subtitle that they've wanted. And with bated breath, all the company's major players keenly observe the audience reaction to Nasty Bits, who we can see it. And I love the way this was done. The audience at first wants absolutely nothing to do with them because they're just an opening act. They want to see the dolls, but then they fall in love with their music. But cops do show up because of the band's lyrics. Everyone seems happy about it, except for Lester. Lester has this look in his face where he's not happy. And to me, I feel like Lester was thinking that. One, because, yes, they're playing his song. He wants the crowd to hear it. But two, I think he's reminding himself what happened when he was beaten by Golasso and all those things. And, you know, to him, this is justice. You know, justice needs to be done here. But, you know, things like this happen in rock concerts all the time, and Richie did clearly call the police for publicity. That's why he did this, but they are successful. Obviously, there's a crazy, you know, crowd. The crowd's going nuts here, but that's exactly what Richie wanted. He wanted the crowd to go nuts. He wanted the crowd to love the song. That's exactly what happened here. So Richie's in back of the bar for another meeting with his liaison, who's eager for more information on Golasso. Richie adds some fictional content to his recent office meeting with Golasso. The officer isn't sure whether to believe him, but Richie doesn't offer any additional info. Basically tells him that, look, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. Nothing bad's going on. I'm just done. He doesn't want to do this because now he knows what Golasso can do. He doesn't really know how to handle this, and basically he's just done. He doesn't care. He's done, and I'm glad because it does close out what was a storyline that I just felt the show didn't need. The show doesn't need this whole crime situation going on. Focus on the music, focus on what makes this show so great, and then do the crime stuff second. So after the liaison leaves, the bar owner asks Richie's advice on a new name for the bar. He's planning on turning it into a concert venue, and the new name of the place is CBGB, and That was awesome. I love that we saw it, which of course, as you know, CBGB is one of the big spots in New York. Like, it's a huge spot in New York. It's a place where there's tons of rock stuff. There's, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that kind of stuff. CBGB is a very famous place near New York, which I'm very happy that we heard about in this episode. Very cool stuff. And just that little, just that little tidbit there, I thought was really cool. Again, this show does a really good job with just little references of rock stuff here and there. They did a very good job with that, and there's so many that I could just go back in the season. You could probably find a million of them. I think it's really cool the way they did that all season. So Richie looks around incredulous, wondering who would ever come to such a dive, and the after party for the Nasty Bits is underway in the ACR Alibi offices. Richie arrives to read a glowing review of the band's performance and gives everyone in attendance a blunt lecture about the future of the company, and basically, again, talks about what music means to him and everything that matters, and I love the way that was done. Basically, Zak walks in, listening intently, knowing that he doesn't necessarily have a place here, but he does still want to work, and I do think he kind of wants to patch things up with Richie, but you don't really know. Is he thinking of patching things up with Richie? Is he just kind of just listening in? I mean, you don't really know here. So Richie has cans of spray paint distributed to everyone in attendance and invites them to spray paint the walls with whatever comes to mind, and Julie initiates the graffiti, then everyone quickly joins in, and it's really chaos. I mean, things are going crazy here. Zak and Richie then look from eyes from across the room. Zak turns to leave. A small smile forms on Richie's face. You can see he smiles, but Zak doesn't seem to smile back, and that's how the episode ends. So, and the season as well. So overall, guys, I did enjoy this finale. Was this too neat of a finale? I mean, yeah, it was a very neat finale. There wasn't really a ton of stuff going on. There was a lot going on, but a lot of it was closed out very quickly. Why? I really think it's because Terrence Winter has now left the show. They want to move on. I think that was the plan initially. I think Terrence Winter wanted to leave because he just knew a lot of the things he wanted to do wasn't really working, and he wanted to basically give it to a new showrunner to work the show. I think Terrence Winter had all these ideas of kind of recreating Boardwalk Empire or doing like a Goodfellas thing, and don't get me wrong, Golasso had some scenes here where he really did feel like Goodfellas. I mean, that one scene where he's saying to Zak, "What's funny?" That's the complete Joe Pesci. I mean, that you guys know Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, one of the creepiest things ever. That's very much like that, the way that scene was done. But I do think the idea here is to turn the show into what it should be, and that is a music show is first and a crime show second. That's really what this should be. I'm happy that they're going in that direction. I like where the show is headed. I like that they're going to now have, the Alibi Records and everything like that. And Richie's done with, he wants to vote, and I love what Richie says. He talks about how he wants to focus on the music that makes the kids learn and makes the kids stop them from doing things. Because, kids commit suicide, and a song can just change someone. I think it really does go with the idea that a song can just change someone and make them better and things like that, which I thought was a very interesting thing to talk about. I definitely really did enjoy that. And overall, guys, like I said, I really did enjoy this finale. Let's talk about this season overall. Look, you guys know I love the first episode of the season, and then I never really thought the show delivered up to that. It really didn't, because the first episode presented all these great ideas for, like, cameos and rock stars, and we focused, I think, way too much on the crime, and way too much on Richie as well. A lot of substance abuse, a lot of crazy stuff going on just in the first season, and they definitely tried to make him more likable. That's the first thing they did. The second thing they need to do is get rid of this whole crime element and focus on the music, which they did that as well. So for me, this was a season that never fully released it, never really realized its potential. I don't think it's a bad season by any means, but I don't think it's an amazing season either. Where was Devon? I have no idea where Devon was this episode. I don't know why she wasn't here. It didn't make any sense to me. For me, the season was not perfect, but I do think there were some things that were very strong about it. The music, some of the characters. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that. Lester especially, I feel like Lester never really got to shine as much this season. Like, he's a very good actor. He's still probably one of my favorite characters on the show, and I do feel that next season he'll have more to do. Jamie as well, a lot of the characters that had not as much to do this season, I'd love to see have more to do. Like Julie and Skip, give them something more compelling to do, because Julie and Skip at this point, they just seem like guys that work at the A&R office. I want to see them have more context. Zak had such a great story. Jamie has such a great story. I want to see them give some more secondary characters more to do, because they work very well together, definitely, and I'd love to see them get more to do. But overall, guys, I'm you guys saw this season. Love to hear your thoughts. And like I said, not at all a bad finale, just a very neat finale. Not a lot to discuss hanging into next season. Pretty much, I think we're starting out fresh next season. We're going to start out fresh. We're going to kind of just go where the show left off. I don't really know how the new showrunner is going to be. The new showrunner does do, he's done something that I can't think of anything offhand right now that he's done. But he has done some things, and he is a very good director. So I am looking forward to seeing what this new writer is going to do. It's sad to see Terrence Winter leave, but I understand why he wanted to leave. He wanted to start off fresh. He wanted to leave it in someone else's hands because he just felt that his idea just wasn't going to work. And I do feel Martin Scorsese, he's still working it, obviously. So I hope Martin Scorsese does do more because he did a very good job writing the first episode. And I never really got the Martin Scorsese feel after that first episode. And I want to get more of that as, then second season. And I want to get more music as well. The music I thought was just fantastic all season long. I think all the music was great. I definitely really did enjoy it. The way we focused on the nasty bits this episode, that's what I wanted all season. Focus on the music, focus on the artists, focus on the struggle that they have with them. The storyline with Gary, the apartment, that's a great storyline. Show that struggle that Gary's going through. Definitely focus on that. I really do like the way they're doing that. Overall, guys, I'm just guys saw this season. For me, like I said, I do think next season we're starting out fresh, and I overall did enjoy the season, and, there are some things that I didn't love about it, especially episode 5. You guys know that. But I do think the direction we're headed is a positive one. I'm looking forward to seeing how next season's going to be. And I'm definitely going to continue watching next season because I am definitely intrigued. And I don't think it's going to be like a leftover situation where the first season's good and really good and the second season's fucking amazing. I don't think it's going to be like that. But I do think the show can live up to its potential. I do think the show still has time to find its footing. And I do think next season it's going to be a lot better than it was this season. But anyway, guys, I'm you guys thought of this first season. Love to hear your thoughts on it. And I will see you guys in the next video, which will be for the season of Girls. Because Girls is also ended last night. And I just gotta watch the finale, and then I will review that to you, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.